for our month. Oh, thank you very much for that. Um, yeah, that's more of a warning for our two speakers that this is being recorded. It will be posted on our college website in perpetuity. So there is evidence. So again, my name is Brendan Morioka. I'm the Dean for the College of Engineering, and very much appreciate everybody for tuning in to our College of Engineering Leadership Seminar Series. It is a monthly series where we attempt to find leaders within our community. So this month I was a little bit struggling to find people. You know, we had two really good speakers to start off, Stanford Carr and Mayor Blangiardi, and then we will continue throughout the rest of the calendar year with leaders within our community. But in all seriousness, today's two speakers, Glen Kaneshige and Lance Wilhelm, very good friends, known them for a very long time, and I have always been very impressed with what they have done throughout their careers and what they have done in the community and the kinds of leadership positions that they've held. So I respect them very much for everything that they have done, which is why it was very important for us to have both Glen and Lance as a part of our leadership seminar series and to help kick off some of the start of this series. So with that, I am going to turn it over to two of our engineering student ambassadors. They are seniors in our civil engineering department, Mallory Hitaishi and Lindsay Tagawa, and I will let them take it away.
Hi guys, so I'm just going to introduce Lance so far. So Lance began his career in construction as an office manager trainee for Kiewit Pacific Co. in the April of 1989. The position no longer exists as the functions related to the job have been automated out of existence. And 25 years later, Lance left Kiewit Infrastructure West Company as its vice president of Hawaii operations, having spent his last several years with the firm helping to oversee the first 3 construction contracts for the Honolulu's rail program. Lance spent the next 3 years as Iron Gate's managing principal before forming his own consulting management firm creatively named the Wilhelm Group. Today, Lance and his team are involved in a wide variety of projects in both the public and private sectors in engagements that range from early stage development to construction management. Lance has served on numerous boards as director and trustee, including a number of ERISA trust funds, nonprofits such as the Kupu Hawaii and the YMCA, industry groups like GCA and educational institutions such as the HPU and Island Pacific Academy. In 2012, Lance was appointed to the Board of Trustees of the Kamehameha Schools, where he is currently serving as a chair.
I will be introducing Glen Kaneshige today. Glen Kaneshige is president of Nordic PCL Construction, Inc. Glen was president and CEO of Nordic Construction Ltd. From 1999 until he became part of the PCL family of companies in April 2008. As president of Nordic PCL Construction, Glen sets the strategic direction for the company in Hawaii while remaining involved in the company's operations. He started with Nordic as a project engineer upon his return to Hawaii from college on the mainland, and subsequently held the positions of project manager, vice president of operations, and executive vice president. Glen had the opportunity to work on noteworthy projects such as the Kaiser Honolulu Clinic, the Ali'i Place, and the James Campbell Building in Kapolei. He has served as president of the General Contractors Association of Hawaii in 2006, and is currently one of the 4 Associated General Contractors Governors for Hawaii. In March 2011, Glen was awarded Outstanding Builder of the Year by the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters in recognition of his contributions to union construction and labor management relations. Glen is active in supporting several nonprofits and currently serves on the board of directors for Child and Family Service, American Heart Association, Teach for America, and the Girl Scouts of Hawaii. He is a graduate of Iolani School and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering for the University of California at Berkeley, and the Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. Let's all give a nice Zoom welcome to Lance and Glen.
So maybe we can start off by having each one of you guys say a little bit about yourselves, and then we can get into some of the more Q&A dialogue. So maybe we'll start off with the the more dangerous Lance Wilhelm.
Always risky. So I think there's at least there's a number of people who have tuned in today because watching Glenn and I on the same panel is a little bit like watching a train wreck happen in slow motion. So you don't necessarily want to see the carnage, but you probably cannot help but watch. So the bios and the introduction are very kind. Thank you for that. It certainly for me, it makes me seem more important than I am in reality. For Glenn, it makes him more important than he is in reality. But so Glenn and I have known each other for almost 30-something years, and irrespective of how we find ourselves in the same space, it happens a lot for whatever reason. And so we served together on the General Contractors Association we have for many years. Glenn is the current president of the Labor Association, and in that role, I serve as his vice president. So we manage and negotiate all the collective bargaining agreements for the basic trades in the state of Hawaii. So we do that together, and we do a number of other things like that together with regards to the industry. And occasionally we work on the same projects together in different capacities. So I've known Glenn a long time. I've known his dad a long time. I certainly have known Nordic and PCL as a company for a long time. A lot of respect, in spite of everything I say, and in spite of everything that I will say for the next hour or so. A lot of respect for Glenn. Now, good luck with that, Glenn.
I never thought I'd ever say thank you, Lance, but thank you, Lance. And Lindsay, that was an impressive introduction of Lance, although I question how much of it is really true. But regardless, as Lance mentioned, we've known each other for a very long time. And actually, going back, I think we were probably one of the youngest members of the on the board of the General Contractors Association many, many years ago. And we were probably in a room full of older guys, and that kind of started our relationship that we kind of truthfully enjoy today. But you know, our paths have crossed so many times in the industry, and we've always been in contact because of GCA. I got into construction because, well, first of all, I got into engineering because, well, first of all, I thought I was going to go into med school because my brother had become a doctor, but I realized that I didn't like being around hospitals, and I did like math. And while I was at Iolani, I did kind of do okay in math, and my dad was running Nordic at the time, and during the summers I did work around the construction industry. And so I went into civil engineering, and upon coming back, went right into the industry, and it's been a great ride. The time has gone by really fast. But I would say like 90% of what I know today is something you actually get on the job. College gives you a background that you will use in your career, but a lot of what you will learn is going to be actually from your job experience. So with that, I'll turn it back to you guys.
You guys, and
yeah, so Mallory and Lindsay were going to ask us questions, but yes. if they're scared, and I can understand why you'd be scared, you know, with Glenn, I'm happy to also ask Glenn questions because I have a number of questions. Very few of it has to do with construction, but or leadership.
And Lance makes this point because during our prep meeting, I know Mallory and Lindsay are scarred for life from the conversations that they were having during our prep.
They're a little scared. They're a little scared. It's okay. It's okay.
But no, we will start off with Mallory and Lindsay's questions first. Then we can get to
I think that's a good idea.
That's probably wise.
Time permitting, Mr. Wilhelm.
I wouldn't want Wilhelm taking this program over.
But for anyone else, if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and Mallory and Lindsay will be monitoring the chat, and they'll pull up questions as we get them.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So the first question I have is, construction and engineering has always been one of the two main drives in Hawaii's economy, but during the pandemic, the construction and engineering industry has seemed to make it through much better compared to some other economic sectors. Being so involved in our industry, what do you see as the outlook for construction and employment opportunities in the engineering industry? And I'll go with Lance first, and then Glenn, you can answer.
Oh, we told them that it was probably wise to pick a person to answer because if you just leave it up to us, there's going to be like arm wrestling. It'll be
A lot of vacillation.
Yeah, unattractive to answer. So I will say that's true. We were very blessed in our industry. When the pandemic hit and tourism basically closed, that's the main driver of our economy here locally, and even within the construction industry, we're all related. So a lot of the work that we do is in the hospitality industry. A lot of people got concerned about hospitality just as a market sector, and so some of that work dried up. I think Glenn experienced some of that in the work that he had lined up. But by and large, we got support from the government and from agencies to keep our jobs working. I will say that not all of that was accidental. Some of it, we actually as an industry were proactive in trying to make sure that we could continue to work throughout the pandemic. And we did things like building coalitions between labor and management, working on programs that span companies and be industry-wide to make sure that we had sort of an industry response to pandemic and not just a company by company response, because we felt that was going to be really important as we got through the pandemic. So right now, my sense is that construction has remained strong. If you look across the country at the economy, building sectors continue to be strong. Housing is a problem, not just in Hawaii, but particularly in Hawaii, across the country. Building and construction costs are rising, materials are short, and demand is high. And so it's a pretty good time to be in the construction industry. We continue to try to work as safe as we can. I'll turn it to Glenn.
Thank you, Lance. I'm actually very bullish on the construction industry. And not to repeat what Lance said, we were able to come through the pandemic pretty well. There was a lot of momentum in the industry when the pandemic hit. We were in essential business, so we were allowed to continue working. And as Lance said, we demonstrated that we could cooperate with the unions and the associations to show that we could work safely. The reason why I say that I'm bullish is that we're in a very low interest rate environment. There is a lot of capital around, and Hawaii is such a limited land area with very high desirability. It will continue to spur development and keep land costs up. And we also have something coming down the road, which is the light rail project, which is going to create what we call these areas of TOD zoning around the station, which is this half-mile radius that will spur future development once rail and when rail comes on board. So I think it's a very bright future. Rail is not only a transportation project, it's an economic development project. And I think it's going to transform certain areas like Kalihi, where you're going to see a lot of growth in the future. As Lance already mentioned, there is a huge demand for affordable housing. I think we're somewhere between 30 to 40,000 units behind. I don't know if we can ever catch up. I think the way that's going to get, we're going to have to address that is to create density in the urban corridors. And that's going to be more vertical. And I think that's going to create issues with infrastructure, which will also create more jobs for construction. So right now, it's a good place to be. I think, Lance mentioned we were dealing with this hyperinflation materials. At some point, that'll pass. I think the longer term issue we need to be addressing is going to be the shortage in the workforce here for people in construction. So kudos to UH and to Brandon for putting these kind of programs together, encouraging young people to go engineering, because the industry is going to need people like you coming out of the College of Engineering.
Okay, so the next question is there one project that you worked on during your career that really sticks out to you, and what made that project so important and meaningful and impactful to you?
Let's hear from Glenn first.
Yeah, because it's going to take a little while for Lance to think of a project that he actually started and actually finished. So he needs the time. There's a bunch of projects that I really favor, but the one I think that kind of sticks in my mind is I managed we built the James Campbell building in Kapolei back in the very early 90s. And I say that one is somewhat, I hold that one in favor because first of all, it's one of the very few buildings in Hawaii that's actually a stone-clad building. It's cladded with Indiana limestone and split-face granite. But I also say that it holds a special place to me is because it was really like the first building in Kapolei at the time we started the job. The Kamakila Boulevard, which is the main boulevard going right into Kapolei, was under construction. And then we were starting this building project in the middle of a cane field with no roads around the building. But Campbell Estates wanted to make the commitment that they were going to relocate to Kapolei to spur the growth of the second city. So we were building in the middle of a cane field with no roads around us. And that really became like the hub and the center of Kapolei. And obviously, if you drive down Kapolei today, it's a very vibrant area. So that job, the James Campbell building, does hold a special place in my heart. So Lance, I hope you thought about the project that you
Yeah, I did think about it. Thank you for that. I always wondered why, because I've been inside the James Campbell building, and I always wondered why the floors are a little bit out of level. And so now I know it's because you never have anything around to go by. So I get that. I get that now. So for me, I guess, then so Brandon said, hey, go tell some stories about like what your background and experiences. So I'll tell a little bit story about the project that had some of the most meaning for me. So I probably did 16 of my 25 years with Kiewit on the vertical side. So I mean, on the horizontal side. So I built a lot of roads and bridges, worked in the heavy civil side, moved a lot of dirt and rock. And then at one point I get promoted, and then now I'm in charge of vertical building. And among other people, Glenn gave me a hard time about that because he said, what do you know about vertical construction? And my answer was concrete, no care how you pour it, right? So concrete, no care if you pour it flat. But anyway, among the very first things, opportunities I got running our Kiewit business was the Trump Tower, which we did in joint venture with AC Kobayashi. And I was brand new to vertical construction. It was $270 million of high rise, which Kiewit had never done in Hawaii. In joint venture with a firm we'd never done a joint venture with, a kind of project we'd never done here before. And so we're about to sign this contract. And the CEO of Kiewit Corporate calls me up from his cell phone. And so, when you belong to a big company like Kiewit, you don't hear from the CEO very often. And in fact, I didn't know the CEO knew my name, to be honest with you. And so he calls and he says, hey, I need a half hour of your time. And so he's the CEO of the company. So what am I going to tell him? And so he begins to make a list of all the reasons why I should not execute this contract. And he talks about why, Kiewit has never done that kind of work in Hawaii, and we don't have the experienced people, and you, Lance, are not experienced enough to run this kind of job, and here's the risk associated. And 30 minutes he did this with me, and then he says, well, so Lance, at the end of the day, it's your decision to make, but I wouldn't do it if I were you. Good luck. And he hangs up. It's a true story. And I was supposed to sign the contract the next day with Russell Young at ACK. And so scared out of my wits as a much younger person and with a lot of pressure, I decided at that moment that, you know what, two things I thought. Number one, I had a job before I started this job, and so maybe I could go back. And number two, McDonald's is always hiring, so whatever, I'll be okay. And so I signed a deal. Years later, and we built it, and it was fine, and we did okay. I realized that it was just his way of making sure that I appreciated the responsibility that I had, and that when I took on that kind of responsibility, I knew it was me who owned it. And that was his way of doing it. It was kind of mean-spirited, but it was his way of doing it. And it wasn't the project so much, it wasn't the dollar value or any of that. It was that experience of being in a seat for the first time in my career, having that level of responsibility and really fully appreciating the weight of that. That's probably the most memorable project for me.
Both of you guys have had such a lot of experience in your field, so I'm curious as to what is the hardest obstacle you've had to overcome. And since Lance is talking, we'll go with him first.
Well, a lot of my obstacles have to do with Glen Kaneshige. So I mean,
this could be a very long talk from Lance.
Yeah, that's you have no idea how hard it is to work with him. It's interesting because there's a lot of young people on this call going through their education, engineering, and you start off in this business. Primarily, people hire you and promote you at early stages in your career based on your potential, what they believe you can produce. And so your technical abilities, your ability to learn the business, your ability to do the work, be efficient at it, understand it, that's the most important thing by far. But a career is sort of an arc, and you get to a point at which some of that stuff is not as important, and what becomes important is your ability to work with other people, your ability to relate, your ability to communicate, your ability to lead and to manage and to inspire. And it's those softer skills that end up being the most important until you get to a place, honestly, and where Glenn and I are, we don't really get to pour concrete anymore as much as we probably would like to some days. Like it would beat some of the stuff I have to do if you could just go out there and like do the work. We don't really get to do that. What we get to do is work with other people, solve bigger problems, talk through issues, think a little bit bigger and broader. And so I think as you think about the arc of your career, one thing you have to realize is that as you get toward the top and as you move beyond that, it's all of the soft stuff. It's your understanding each other, the communication, the needing to empathize and try to understand before trying to get people to understand you. Those sorts of things are what carry the day for me.
Oh, for myself, you quickly realize that in our business there is no sure thing, and as much as you might think that your people will perform at a certain level, you're going to have to learn that at times you're going to get disappointed and when they don't, and you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with that and to actually help them out, to get them to where they need to be. But also understanding that there is no sure thing. You can never count on the next job, and you could think that you have the inside track or the edge that'll get you to winning the job, and then you're gonna again faced with disappointed that the job was awarded to somebody else. There might have been politics involved. You speculate, but you don't know, and so you gotta quickly move on, and get the next job. So you just gotta learn to live with that kind of disappointment and move on. So the other thing that I think that obstacle I think that I've had to learn is that been disappointed that our business is so easy to get into a dispute, and I had to overcome the obstacle, I guess, of not being able to resolve all the issues without having to bring in the lawyers, and that's the last resort. You really want to put your differences aside one-on-one with the party you contract to. And it's unfortunate that in this business, you can't always do that. And you can't control the other party, what they're going to do. And sometimes you got to bring in attorneys. And that's something that you just got to learn to accept.
Okay, so the next question is, what does Hawaii need most from our next generation of leaders? So for the younger people now.
Oh, let's start with Glenn on that, because
boy.
he's way far from being a young person, so it might be hard for him to relate.
First, I think the leaders in Hawaii have to try and create an environment that hopefully keeps the kids here. You know, that the students coming out of the university have the opportunity here to stay and to have a lifestyle, a very satisfying lifestyle. You know, but in terms of what kind of, you know, as an employer, you know, we want to have employees that are reliable, that are committed, that have the basic tools to do the work, and the attitude, you know, and the aptitude to do the work, beyond just showing up. I mean, half the battle, the old saying is half the battle is just showing up. But you want to have the people, the energy, and the right people that, you know, that no matter what kind of environment you put them in, they're going to manage the challenges, and they're also going to figure out how to work with other people, because nobody can put up a building by themselves. So in terms of preparation, that ability to collaborate and to work with other people is crucial, and to communicate, and how to persevere. Those things are very important to your future employers. Before like early on, I used to review a lot of resumes of people that apply, and I used to, you know, think that GPAs and what the big name college you went to mattered. But today I pay less attention to what your GPA is and what Ivy League school you might have come from. You know, a lot has to do with more the interpersonal skills and the attitude that you try and pick up maybe in an interview, and also look at what kind of activities maybe the individual was involved with during college. But really, a lot of it to me is attitude.
I would.
Speaking of attitude, I think Lance could probably improve on that.
I was about to agree with you, but now I changed my mind. I don't agree. No, I do think that, you know, if you think about what it takes to be successful today versus what it takes to be successful when Glenn and I were younger, you know, I think back in our day, like, you could actually just kind of go through checklists and do your job and keep your head down and just sort of do your thing. And every day, if you check the next box, then you're making good progress. But, you know, we really need, in our industry and in the world today, we need problem solvers, because the world is vastly more complicated than it used to be. The things that I think Glenn and I concern ourselves with now are vastly different than what our bosses concern ourselves with. We actually have to be concerned about things like the supply chain and how does shipping out of Taiwan affect us. We never had to worry about stuff like that. We have to worry about finance and the global economy and how Hawaii's economy fits inside of that. And all the way down to the people on our staff have to solve bigger problems than what we had to concern ourselves with in our time. And it's because the world is more complicated. It's because the project schedules are more compressed. It's because our clients, the people who we work for, have higher expectations about our performance and what we do as a business. And so the problem solving skills and the ability to think beyond your job is really, really important. And I think this was always the case, but it's more true now than ever before. If you really want to get ahead in our business, you have to have an attitude where there's no such thing as not my job. There was a time where you could say, well, this is what I do, and this is my kuleana, and then this is what you do, and that's your that those days are gone. You have to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Be willing to sit in more than one seat, wear a lot of different hats, and then solve bigger problems, more complex problems. That's the world we live in today. I think if you, I was listening to Glen's bio, which I try not to listen to, it's super annoying. But Glen is involved in a lot of organizations, and I'm involved in a lot of different organizations, and that's not accidental. It's because that's the nature of what our community needs, and we can solve these problems better, both professionally and philanthropically, by being involved in these things. So we do it purposefully, and we get involved in these things because that's what the problem requires, is a more holistic response that helps us all, I think, make for a better community and builds your career.
Yeah, I would just like to add, this is a very, very rare occasion I might agree with Lance here, but you really want to be careful on setting boundaries, on what you think your job is or what you can do. You really got to go stretch yourself beyond the boundaries. When you're on a project, you just can't say, well, that's the architect's job and the architect needs to do that, and therefore we're not doing anything until the architect does his or her job, or the engineer or the owner. Sometimes you got to
join the meeting
and learn what they need to do, and sometimes you need to almost pick up the ball that is somebody else's responsibility and run with it to keep it going. But that's the kind of attitude that it's going to take for you to advance. And further to what Lance was saying about, not just staying in your industry, but you got to get outside even what maybe construction, architecture, engineering. You do have to expand your horizons beyond just what we're trained to do into understanding other business models, because they are going to be the source of your clients in the future. The better you understand, the better you can communicate with them.
Thank you. I think that was really great information for the younger engineers, especially myself. We have a question from GCA of Hawaii in the chat. So what is the most rewarding part of your career? So both of you guys are laughing. Maybe Lance can go first. Or Glenn, up to you guys.
We tried to tell people don't call into this thing because we didn't want to have questions from particularly GCA of Hawaii, but I think when you get older, Glenn is like 60 years old. So just to be honest about it, he turned 60 like a couple of years ago. There's a lot of product he uses on his face. That's why he looks younger than he is. He's keeping Long's drugs in business. But when I'm a lot younger than Glenn. When you get to be our age, it really ends up being more about the people that you work with, and you start, at least for me anyway. I'm way less concerned about whether I progress in my career from this place to that place, me personally, or does my business do this and get this much bigger next year or whatever. I'm much more interested in, as an industry, are we serving our community better? Are we making Hawaii a better place? What are we doing? What am I doing to make this place that we live and care about better? And when we can move the dial a little bit on that, none of us have huge amounts of influence, but if we can move the dial a little bit on that, then I feel like, okay, that's making what I do worthwhile. So I think it's part of it is the benefit of age and just a little bit more experience and a little distance from the start of our career. Glenn is further distant from the start of his career, so I'd be interested to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm just slightly older than Lance, although if you didn't know that, you would think Lance is a lot older than I am, but that must probably the result of a lot of stress and the lifestyle that he chooses to live. But yeah, that question, if you asked me several years ago about what's that, I would probably tie it to like a project that I was involved in, and it had a great outcome, very satisfied client, and it stands, it stands out somewhere here in downtown Honolulu. But I think the satisfying what I find satisfying is like watching a younger person, and maybe somebody I had more direct contact with, develop in their career. And maybe they're a younger engineer, a younger project manager, and today they're at a more senior level. And getting to watch them develop, or take the steps up in their career, and give it their best, to get where they are today. And also the ability to interact with them along the way, to help them, give them advice or help coach them here and there. I think is more satisfying. Yeah. So I guess several years ago I would have said it's building some building, that was probably the most satisfying. But I would say today is watching the building of people that is actually more satisfying.
Great. So another question is about mentorship. So mentorship is really important. Have you guys ever had a mentor, and then what do you recommend for students in the best navigation to find a mentor that can help them grow?
Well, if Lance ever had a mentor, that mentor did a pretty bad job. But Lance, why don't you go ahead and explain what happened? Where the train went off the tracks.
By the way, Glenn, I appreciate how you put the the filter on your camera to make it look a little bit. I know you don't use high def for good reason, so thanks for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, at least in my youth, right? There's the whole idea of like mentorship and mentor mentee. That was really not a thing when I was younger. There were guys that I was very fortunate to know and spend time with, and they were willing to give me the time and space and teach me this or that or the other thing. And I was just very, very lucky. We never did a lot of that formal thing. I do think though that in our business, we're very lucky, because in our business, first of all, like gray hair matters in what we do, right? So older guys who've been around longer have made way more mistakes in their careers, and screwed stuff up really bad. And so those are the guys who know stuff. And it's hard to substitute years of experience in our business with like book learning, or it's hard to fast track that, because we learn so much by doing in our business, and you got to kind of screw up to learn stuff. And so that's why guys like Glenn get PhDs, because you screwed up plenty. But so in our business in particular, it's helpful to have people with more experience in and around you. The other good thing about our business though is that everybody that I know that I've ever met in our business is more than willing to share. They're very generous people. I've spent time with a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of backgrounds. And I think what's really important is that you come to those relationships just with an open heart and a real interest in learning what they have to tell you. And then what I would say to a young person is just don't think about mentors as trying to find a person in a job that you want to have one day, and that is going to be your mentor. I learned a ton from mechanics who spend most of their days on their back under pieces of equipment doing undercarriage work on a dozer. I learned a lot from carpenters who spend most of their days pounding nails into wood, building formwork. And those guys are very generous with their time, and they've taught me so much more than I could ever learn. So think about everybody older than you who's been or doing things that are of interest to you, and just take a little piece of all of that. Having said that, I think both Glenn and I try to be available to people as much as we can be. It's and to Glenn's point, it's one of the joys of what we do, is that somebody comes up and asks us what we think. Sadly for those who ask, we're going to tell them what we think. I mean, that might be a problem, but I think we're all very open to that. It's one of the joys of what we do.
I think mentorship is incredibly important, because it can help a young person circumvent a lot of pain and suffering, because what you hope to gain from the mentor is obviously the insight, the experience of what could happen or what should I be aware of. I think mentorship today in organizations or companies is a little more formalized than like when Lance and I were coming up in the industry. There wasn't somebody that we were assigned to when we were younger engineers and all that stuff that would counsel us. And I think, back then it was more like you learn by getting scolded or your butt chewed. But there were people that were willing to give you tidbits of advice. And I think there are plenty of people in senior positions that are willing to share their experience and advice, but the young person has to go and get it. It does not just come served to you on a platter that this is what you need to know. When I was your age, this is what I wish I had known, because I could have advanced more quickly, or I could have circumvented a lot of pain and suffering. And unless you seek it out, really, it won't come to you. You have to go and find it. And if you can find, and don't limit yourself to one or two people. You can have several. It's always good to get the perspective of a broad range. Lance talked about the mechanic or the carpenter. Those people are very, very, very wise in how things are put together. They have a lot of experience, and they glean a lot of insight from their hard work, and so there's value there too. So don't limit yourself to I got one or two people that I see as my mentor. Get as many as you can, but you have to go and ask for it. It doesn't come served on a platter.
And don't think just narrowly within like the company you work for, the company you keep. I was very fortunate because I knew Glen's dad, and Glen's dad was very kind and generous with me with his time, and shared a lot of information. He never scolded me like he scolded Glen. I got a lot of enjoyment actually watching him scold Glen, but Mitz was a tough guy, and he taught me a lot about how to be tough when you needed to be tough. And so you can go outside of your company. And one of the things about organizations like the GCA or like the nonprofits that we work with is that you get to meet these people in other businesses, in some cases other industries, people that are like really important, impressive people, and you get to spend time with them, and learn from them. And so that's a reason why you want to step outside of your own circle and get outside and do things industry wide or beyond your industry.
I would suggest that when it comes down to picking a mentor, you want to go to somebody that you find inspiring. If you can use that as a criteria to determine who you want to approach, who inspires you, and then ask that person, for, can I have, some time with you over maybe a cup of coffee or something like that, and get the conversation going. But I think that is a criteria that you want to use to determine who should be a mentor to you.
Thank you. D. Morioka actually has a question, so I'll let him take it away.
Really? Really?
Okay,
This should be entertaining.
I'm on my toes.
So, so you talked about mentorship and impacts of mentors, and you guys talked about a project that really, that you think back fondly of. But was there a specific incident or person or event that really caused you to kind of switch the light on in your career or in your life, that kind of changed your whole perception? And besides your CEO story, and I know you're just name dropping, Lance, but other than that, was there some one thing in your life that happened, one person or whatever, that kind of changed everything, like going forward from that point?
Wow.
Don't
So
think
you
too
went,
hard. I know you guys are getting older, so just don't
no
think too
kidding. Like you went dig deep for that one, huh? Like you went into the bowels to go find that question.
I'm dragging the bottom of the barrel with this
No.
seminar today, so
Sorry, and I can see the number of participants. Glenn and I both so very disappointed we couldn't get more people. If you let us call the kinds of people we know, we could have got more. But
we're gonna on our webpage where everybody can go back and look at these videos. I'm gonna post the number of attendees or viewers so that we can track.
The kind of people we know, no more internet connection. I'm just telling you. So okay, so I'm gonna start so that Glenn has.
I don't know. I see Kurt Otaguro on this thing, so you obviously.
Oh my word,
boy.
Kurt Otaguro.
Kurt. Oh my God. Oh, I'm honored.
You ask us a couple different questions about like current policy or fiscal responsibility, something a little bit more timely. No, okay. So I'm going while Glenn thinks, because it takes a while and you might actually see the smoke coming from his head. But I'm going to start. So I'm going to tell a story, just a quick story. It's a true story, and I think it has made a big difference for me. So I was very young. I was small. It's a story about my mom. So the next neighbor, the Nakamura lady, gave us some cookies on a platter one day, and we whacked them because we were kids and punks, and so we ate all the cookies. And so my mom told me, "Hey, you gotta go take this plate back to Mrs. Nakamura." I said, "Okay." So I grabbed the plate and I go run out the door. She yelled at me, said, "Wait, where are you going?" I said, "Hey, so you told me to take the plate back to Mrs. Nakamura." And she said, "You never take back an empty plate. You never take back an empty plate." And I have never forgotten this story. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And that meant a lot to me. So what my mom was trying to tell me is that whatever you have in life, you got to give back. You got to give at least as much, if not more, back to the world, because you've been blessed. And so don't ever forget your primary responsibilities to your community, to your neighbors, to your friends and family, and never return an empty plate. And I've tried over the course of my life and my career to remember that. It's certainly colored, what I do and the way I do it. So since you asked that question.
Brennan, I was, in terms of a very challenging situation. So very early in my career, I was on a project that's at a very large private school that is owned by a very large trust, and I won't mention what school that is. It was a five.
But it's not Iolani, is it?
Iolani's not owned by a trust.
No.
So it was a battle, and every day started becoming not fun because everything just turned into a dispute. And I quickly learned on that job that college doesn't prepare you for that kind of adversity, and that that running a project really requires being able to work with people, and it almost requires you to be a lawyer. And in fact, at that time, the job got so rough, I thought maybe at that time that maybe I wasn't cut out for this. In spite of me completing an engineering background in college, that maybe I should be doing something. And actually, I got interested in maybe I should go to law school, because it seems like all we do is deal with very litigious subjects. And what I learned is I stuck it out and persevered. And at one point, I thought the job was never going to end. You start when you're on a tough job, it's almost like you get a little brainwashed. And I thought the job wasn't going to end, but I thought I just got to stick it out. So I persevered, and we did eventually finish the job. And I look back that I'm glad I didn't get asked to be removed or taken off the job and taken the easy way out. And when I look back, because it was also early in my career, I realized that suffering is the greatest teacher, and that what I learned from that job helped me for the rest of my career. And actually, I was glad that occurred at that point of my career. But hopefully, I look back that kind of helped define me, and that by not just walking out or asking to get reassigned to a job, that gave me some confidence to keep going. So now when I got to the next job, that turned to be a real tough one. I look back at that job and said, hey, I got through that. I can get through this, you know. So it kind of made me a little tougher, I guess, you know, having suffered through that and having learned what I had to learn. But it was a project very early in my career that I look back that really helped me, you know, through my career today.
How come we keep giving you jobs then? Like, what is up with that?
Isn't that the owner's problem? Because don't you sign those contracts, Mr. Wilhelm?
I do now. I don't sign them when they say Nordic PCL. I tell you that.
Yes, so we're running close to the end, and I'm surprised that we've gotten this far.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, but I got one last question before we wrap, and you know, because this is a college level, I mean, it's a college seminar. If you could go back in time, way back, knowing everything that you know now, despite your limitations, is there anything that you would have done back in college? Any kind of class or project or something that you would have done differently, or that you did do that you might recommend to our students that they make sure that they do before they graduate, that would help prepare them a little bit better for entering, you know, as an entry level engineer or contractor or whatever they're going to be doing? Is there something that you would urge them to do, make sure that they do while they're still in college?
Let's see if Glenn can remember what it was like in college. Why don't you answer?
Yeah. Brandon, if I would say, you know, in an engineering curriculum, it's so regimented, at least when I was in college, toward the hard physical sciences, the math, and then you get into whether structural analysis and the physics of it. I think being able to write well is critical to young people today coming out of college. And I say that also because today, I mean, back when I came out of college, we didn't have email, you know, and today so much communication is written. And you have to be able to write clearly and to convey your thoughts and ideas so the person that you're trying to talk to gets it and it's not ambiguous. So the ability to write well and to communicate is very important, and you won't get that. I mean, when I was in the College of Engineering at you know, when I went to school on the mainland, that wasn't emphasized. I was very fortunate in my last semester at UC Berkeley. I could take an elective class, so I signed up for a technical writing class. And I remember the professor at the very first class reading to the class letters she had gotten from graduates who said that they were so glad to have taken her class because they realized later in their careers how important it was to write well. And as much as the people that did well in engineering, upon graduating, and they moved through their careers in whatever companies they ended up with, some of them hit the glass ceiling because they're great engineers, but they couldn't communicate and they couldn't write well. So I would say, you know, as much as you can while you're still at the university, try and take some kind of writing class, you know, or communication. You know, the ability to speak is very important too. But and if you can, I would actually say take a class in basic psychology so you kind of get an understand how people think. You know, I mean, but those are things that you don't get, you know, when you're in the College of Engineering. But if you could maybe take an elective class, I would suggest in those areas. So now I'm not sure Lance even went to college, but let's see him answer this question.
I often think that the best background for people to, you know, for people who do what we do is probably early ed versus engineering, because you got to deal with a lot of preschool kind of age people, like emotionally preschool age, like Glenn, for example. But you know, I do think that as much as possible, get real world experience. Actually, like internships are really great. But any kind of real world experience, even if you're scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins, like, you're gonna learn stuff about people, about how to be thoughtful, how you communicate. It's gonna teach you how to show up on time, how to respect other people's time. So as much as you can, real world experience in any field, and then try to make a point of learning from everything that you're doing. I used to tell people who work for me, like, every boss you have is going to teach you something. Sometimes going to teach you what not to do, and sometimes they're going to teach you like things you want to avoid in your careers. But approach everything you do with this idea that you're learning, that part of this experience is a learning experience. Even if you're earning a paycheck, flipping burgers, make sure you take some learning away from that, and then apply it to that next job, the next move, the next project that you're working on. If you can learn from every experience that you have, by the time you get to be like our age, you're gonna have all the experience you need to be very, very successful.
Well, thank you to both of you for sharing a lot of what you did today. I mean, all kidding aside, you two are two of the people that I very much respect in our community, and I don't know if that's saying a lot about you two or just saying about the kind of people I hang out with.
Or it says a lot about you, Brandon.
This says a lot about you, and it's not good, bro. What this is.
Yeah.
Like you
Well,
might lack with judgment, maybe.
that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much for sharing with our students, our faculty, our industry partners. So a very big mahalo to you. And to everyone else, just a reminder about our next leadership seminar series for the College of Engineering is May 7th. Hopefully you'll find that the next one is a step up from today. And
Should it be hard? Should it be hard? It's a low bars here. Very low.
That's going
Could
to
be
be
anybody.
with, Susan Icor from the AIO group and Susan Yamada, who is now heading up our Atherton project here.
Oh, be careful.
at
Be
UH.
careful with that one. Be careful with Yamada.
So please join us for next month's one. And thank you very much for joining us today. Aloha.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Really appreciate it.
You
Aloha.
two can
Aloha.
hang on, Lance and Glenn.
Oh, okay.